Okay, back at it with a quick live. I'm not going to be on here too long, but just want to talk about a few things. So I'm just going to jump in. We're going to talk about mindset. So mindset is definitely the sneaky, killer of success, basically, is what I have found. And I want to go through, some of I'm going to go through like at least my top 10 productivity mistakes and, how we can avoid those. So I'm going to go in and I just want to start with sleep. Sleep is one of the best ways to improve your productivity, just for the simple fact of we have a higher level of performance as soon as we are recharged. It's no different than operating on half capacity, or if your battery isn't charged all the way up on your phone, like you can't be as efficient, you can't be as sharp. So that's the first thing. And what I say is protect it. So that means for example, controlling temperatures, where you sleep, keep that environment cool. Now there's research you can do to figure out what's the optimal temperature. I tend to like it to be somewhere slighter on the cooler side versus being warmer. Just helps you get into deep sleep a lot quicker. There is a ring called the Oura Ring. So I use that ring. That helps a ton with tracking and getting all kinds of cool analytics on where your sleep is, how you can improve it, and it makes suggestions to you. And if you follow those suggestions, you'll get better sleep. One thing that I've done is I've tracked my wake time and my sleep time and done that in a worksheet separately so that I can basically find what is the time frame that I'm sleeping, what is my time frame that I'm awake, and really tracking it to the minute to figure out where does that time go. And you can do this for like a week. You just sit there and write out how are you spending your time, how are you spending your hours. Like each time you're able to put down your productivity blocks, you can see the output. You can see if you go back to that, let's say in a week, and you look at it and you see that you were successful. And a week might be too short of a time frame, but even if you can look back a month, that gives you time to see things that came to fruition, to see deals that have closed, products that have been launched. You can see where your sleeping patterns were, where your productivity was during that time frame, and basically unlock more performance. Social media. So social media is definitely a double-edged sword. We use it for our business, but it can definitely be tough because if you're using social media for business, it's also easy to use social media for consumption. And if you're using social media for consumption only without intent, without purpose, if you're not showing up to provide some kind of value, some type of product, some type of service, it can definitely be, rough on your sleep. It's tied to your sleep because what happens is you've got marketing people that are really good at marketing and they're really good at hooks and angles. And, if you read any of the old greats, David Ogilvy, or, you read on Claude Hopkins, or you read on, any of the, kind of great copywriters, you'll find that, excuse me, a lot of time what they're doing is they're really appealing. And this is still to modern marketing too. Like they appeal to sort of where, what is our fear? What is our desire? Eugene Schwartz, he was popular for speaking directly to the fears and desires, directing marketing onto your customer's fear or desire. So it's not it's not about like making your service or product so glamorous. It's more so about presenting it in a way that's going to trigger, and when you couple that with social media platforms where the main objective is to keep you here, keep you on, keep you attentive to what's going on the news, and, someone you went to school with, someone you work with, your coworkers, to find out what are they doing on the weekend, what do they have for breakfast. It will start to keep working in the background. Excuse me. There's another thing. Performance is about what we see, but it's also very much about what we don't see. When you have closets that are filled with stuff, or you have drawers that are filled with stuff, it's still creating an emotional attachment to the brain. And, there's lots of research on this. If you can just Google it, but you'll find that when you have a clear mind, that's also like clear house, clear workspace. Everything should be kind of clear. And that also helps with sleep. That stuff is working in the background. It's running in the background, whether we pay attention to it or not. So it's really important to know that if you can take your, conscious effort to kind of clear everything socially, clear your calendar, and I say clear your calendar, but I'm saying clear it in a sense of you don't want to be, disproportionately spending time on, social media or television, even entertainment, advertisements. This is a big one. Advertisements right before bed can be really difficult because, again, advertisements are already triggered they're designed to trigger us. They're designed to grab our attention, to keep us to watch till the end, to buy the thing. And that might mean stirring up some kind of emotion or stirring up some kind of childhood memory. And that's not the ideal environment to sleep in. So we'll keep moving. So apps. I would always try to say, if you can, try to get your apps down to one page on your phone. A lot of time we have apps that are running in the background. We have multiple pages. And I get it. We need it because, apps are a part of society. But some apps that we're not using, if you haven't used, I'm just going to make this up. If you haven't used Twitter app in a while, take it off. Or if you haven't used, hopefully you are using your Cash App. But if you're not using Cash App, then, don't just have it on the phone just for no reason, because it pulls at our mental and it makes it ultimately harder to rest at night. So I would say notifications is another thing that I found has really impacted my sleep. And again, these are just items that I found actually impact my sleep. And again, I'm using, an objective opinion on this. I'm not just coming up with this. I'm using the Oura Ring and I'm testing, I'm tweaking. I've been doing this for years, and finally got it to an optimal point where I feel like I know myself, I know my body, I know like what time I need to be in bed based on like the data. So aim to be in bed between 10 to 11. That's me, that's kind of like testing. I've tested earlier, getting in bed at 8, and then trying to get up at like 4. I've tested staying up late, and there's a really good book called Why We Sleep. And, the doctor goes into all of these like, sleep patterns and circadian rhythm and all the different reasons of why. And it's been a while since I read the book, but it had some really good statistics in there. Basically, he talks about there's two different types of people. There's basically nighttime people and there's morning time people. Some people are more productive at night. So it's good to figure out like which one are you. I think he said 2/3 of the population is daytime, with a third being nighttime. So don't just assume that person, in your life that gets up late and stays up late is, a slacker or something just because, the media pushes on us. You have to get up early. You have to do that. I think it's important to get up early. I got up early today, but it doesn't necessarily mean that like you have to do that. Night shift mode. If you have an Apple device, it probably should let you do this. I'm sure there's something for Android as well. But a night shift mode where basically, you're making the tint on the video or the tint on the screen should be a lot more like yellow, basically. And the idea is the white light is basically more similar to the sun. It keeps us up longer and it doesn't release the proper chemicals to our brain to help us sleep better. But that yellow, softer light can do a lot better for helping us with getting to sleep faster and getting a better, deeper sleep, which again, that leads to more performance and productivity. Last meal of the day. So this one's a big one. I love food. I love trying new foods. I love tasting new foods. But the last meal of the day, ideally for me, is between 6 and 7. So after that, there's no snacking. There's no extra food. Now, here's the thing. I go back to that book, Why We Sleep. They talk about some studies show that it is good to have like a snack at like 9 or 8:30 or something just to help you like sleep a little bit better. So again, you got to test and figure out what works for you, what will help, with your ultimate deep sleep, or what will help you with your readiness. Now, sunlight, let's move on to that. Sunlight and eating clean. Sunlight also is really important because depending on where you live, if you live in a place where it's really gray all the time, it's really hard. It can be hard to get sleep. So, let me see here. I got a question here. What's a great way to redeem your sleep if you've been at home for weeks recovering from surgery and having to rest in order to heal, but your sleep pattern is totally off now? That's a really good question, and hopefully you have a good recovery. I would say number one, probably try not to be, too hard on yourself if you are off of, a sleep pattern. That's something for me. I definitely have been off of sleep patterns. I haven't had anything like a, surgery, but just life in general. I just moved across country, so I'm in a time zone 3 hours behind my normal time zone. My sleep pattern has been a little bit different, but ideally, if you're trying to get back in a rhythm, and I'll touch on this a little bit later, it's about the cue, habit, reward cycle. And that means basically you're kind of psychologically giving yourself a reward to kind of keep the same sleep pattern and to keep the same sleep cycle. And I'll get into kind of more about habits as well. Sunlight, though, does help with sleep because basically it helps our bodies and our brain release the proper chemical to know that it's time to go to sleep when it is time to go to sleep. So it kind of senses from the sun that, okay, it's daylight, I should be awake. This isn't a sleeping day. Like where I'm at right now is very overcast, so it's actually kind of hard to do this, but there's also tools that you can get. Like I believe there's one called a Joovv. A Joovv will also allow you to basically mimic the sunlight and kind of release more of that chemical. And I it's been a while since I've read this, so I think don't quote me on this. I don't know if it's serotonin or it's one of these ones that basically keeps you awake. And then there's one that the receptors, like for example, I believe it's like coffee will basically clog those receptors, and that kind of keeps you awake. But once those receptors are open, that will allow you to basically fall asleep. So we talked about the Oura Ring. Let's just keep going. So like sleep, that's kind of like my first, that's the first productivity mistake that I've seen, myself make and my clients have made, and I've worked with dozens of entrepreneurs. I've worked with a ton of people that, are in various, niches and industries. And these are, all my learnings. I have a podcast. I've interviewed over 100, high performing executives, entrepreneurs, and, I'm always looking to find ways to get better. So the next thing is the routine and a ritual. So the routines are really good because they provide the brain a flow. There's a book called Flow. I don't want to try to pronounce the author's name, but if you just look up the book Flow, it's like a green and yellow cover. And it talks about, kind of being in this zone of operation where you're working, when you're doing something that you love. It could be swimming, it could be cycling, it could be writing. You basically hit this optimal point and it allows you to be more productive. And, my takeaway from it is that we should all be trying to strive to get there. One way to get there is to not have to think consciously about all of the minutia of life and all of the things that maybe don't matter as much. That's why, you may see high-level CEOs are always wearing the same color all the time, or they might always wear, a black turtleneck, or, they may always wear like a gray suit, whatever it is. It's like one less thing that they have to think about, and it allows them to kind of get into the flow. Now, exercise also helps us, and this does tie into sleep as well. These all are kind of interconnected. Exercise does help a ton with, just in general, like keeping a routine and with productivity, so one easy way to, kind of do that is like, if available, have a walk outside, try to get some fresh air. Even as little as 30 minutes a day can do a lot. First activities of the day. So this is another thing I've learned. If you can optimize for your number one point of the day. So if you have a ton of things you got to do, you got 20 things on your list. What's the one thing that's the most important? Excuse me. Gary Keller wrote a book called The One Thing. I mean, everything takeaway from that is in the title. He's saying basically, what's that one thing for the day that's going to move the needle? It might be, it might be creating videos. It might be sending emails, or maybe it's designing something. Whatever that thing is, try to put that in the front of the day, even if it's hard. And then everything else after that can be a lot easier. But if you start with the easier stuff, then it can be harder to get to that thing that is the big thing. It's easier to push it off, and you can't give it your full energy for the day. All right, good inputs, good outputs for your schedule. So, that's just to say that, if you can get, pretty much it's like avoiding things. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business partner, he always talks about, staying away from the things that, he knows are going to basically be detrimental. So if you can know what not to put on your schedule, like, you can do a lot better. So that might be TV. That might be eating too much dessert. That might be too much socializing. It might be under socializing. Whatever it is, try to make sure your schedule reflects it. And a coach that I have, he talks about, could someone find you guilty of, your craft? So if you're like designing or something, like, can people tell? Could people look at your schedule? Could they look at your emails? Could they look at your, do you have some kind of vision board? Would it all like point to the idea that, like, basically you wanted to do something in the design world, or, for me, mine was like, California, for example. I'm out here in California now. And, if you just looked around, you would just see everything around me was just California pictures on the wall, California on my screensavers, California, I had a whole worksheet of California stuff, California checklists, California, information. I have one of these, robot, vacuum cleaners, I named the robot vacuum cleaner California because you had to give it a name, like a name, password, all, don't try to check my stuff, but you get what I'm saying, California. All right. So thinking work blocks, for example, productivity is, and this is something I had to learn from Cal Newport, and you're going to hear a lot of authors. I'm just going to keep rattling them off because I am always reading something. I'm always trying to find, what is the best way to get something done. This is what I'm reading right now. I'm reading this one's Unbreakable Hospitality. I'll talk about this in another live, but, basically Cal Newport talks about work blocks. He talks about work blocks in a sense of, these work blocks are, where you just don't have a phone, you're on do not disturb. And then that was always the hardest thing for me to do, is to basically work in a work block where I'm not like influenced by an email coming in, where I'm not influenced by a phone call coming in. And a lot of people talk about this that are successful. They talk about like not starting the day by checking emails, not starting the day by checking social media. And you're going to find people that are going to say, I do start my day checking email. I do start my day checking social media. But it just depends. You got to try out what works for you. I found for me, definitely, the more that I can do these work blocks, I'm way better off. And it goes without saying, put important things first. Do something that's out of your comfort zone early. So, depending on where you are, you could do something that's out of your comfort zone. So for me, something I love to do, and I did this a lot back east, was I would do cold showers a lot, and then it got cold, like literally cold outside. But when the weather's like moderate, I would love to do like just a cold shower. It just wakes you up. There's a lot. It helps with your skin. It helps with a ton of stuff that, if you just Google benefits of cold showers, you'll find a lot. And what it does is it trains you on something that's seemingly small like that. It trains you in other areas to take advantage of, these things that are outside of your comfort zone. Because most of the time success is like, it's hard because it's out of our comfort zone. It was out of my comfort zone to move to California. It was out of my comfort zone to attend events. It's out of my comfort zone to go get samples made. It was out of my comfort zone to go and, approach certain brands and big companies to buy our products. But basically, that's really where the success starts. Basically, it's like right where the comfort zone ends. So that's what I found works with that. All right, example, I would say, just when we talked a little bit about this earlier, but habits. Habits are basically formed in a basic way. It can take about 66 days to form a new habit. Trigger, action, and reward. So your trigger, that might be, and there's an experiment about this. It's probably not the best example. I don't know that this was the best thing for the dogs, but you probably heard of Pavlov's dogs. Give them some steak, ring the bell, watch them salivate, and then give them the steak. It's just this loop. And that's a habit. So it got to the point where they would ring the bell, the dogs would salivate, even if there wasn't steak. So if we do this in our own life, it's about like, maybe when you wake up, it's like, that you need to drink a lot of water to hydrate. Maybe you're not hydrated enough. That could be a cue. Wake up, drink water. And then the reward might be, okay, maybe you could have a smoothie, or maybe you could have something else, or it could be exercise. Maybe every morning there's a certain bell that rings in your house or an alarm that goes off. You can set an alarm. That's your cue. The alarm goes off. Now it's time for me to work out. You work out, and then your reward is the smoothie, or your reward is, 5 minutes of social media, whatever is the reward. So form a self-image hypothesis and read it twice daily. So this one's deep. So this is where, have you ever read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill or Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz? And a lot of my books are in storage right now. So these are books I still constantly reference, but at any rate, I would say the self-image hypothesis is basically saying, it's like, who are you becoming? Who are you? Like, are you moving towards it? The visual, like, I was on a call last night and the coach was talking about this. He was saying, the thing that helped him really succeed was like having a vision for who he wanted to be, having a vision for what he wanted to do with his life. And it sounds kind of simple, but a lot of time, I found, like, if I don't have a vision, and if I don't have like a clear picture of what I want to accomplish, then now all of a sudden it's like it's harder to do things. It's like those small things that come up in the way, those roadblocks, those speed bumps, we'll call them speed bumps. Those speed bumps get a little bit higher when you don't really know where you're going or why it's important. So, if you haven't, try it. Try to just have a 1-page, like, what do you see for your life? And you can go to Jim Rohn for great exercise on this, but he'll say, have a 10-year goal, a 5-year goal, a 3-year goal, and a 1-year goal, and basically have it itemized out. I think he says no more than 4. So I got 4-year goal. I got 10 year. I have 4 10-year goals. I have, did I say that right? 4 10-year goals, 4 5-year goals, 4 3-year goals, and then 4 1-year goals. And then you can kind of back into it and, make that a part of your self-image hypothesis. And, you'll you'll start to take on the traits of this person that you want to become and what goals you want to make happen. If you want to, have a successful business, it might be, having a certain number of clients or a certain number of sales. Like, you'll start to become that person. And that's really something I found is, like a problem if I don't have that in my life. Excuse me, talk about comfort zone. One thing that I found that helped me with productivity is like actually just sitting down and meditating and just being quiet. Meditation doesn't have to be something that is, confrontational or, it doesn't have to be hard. It can be just being quiet for 5 minutes, quiet for 10 minutes, quiet for 20 minutes. I've tested at different lengths. Just test it out if you haven't. There's apps like Calm, Headspace is another one. I think there's even some free ones on YouTube. I've done plenty of the ones on YouTube. You can try them without words. You can try them with words. You can do water, oceans crashing, or you can hear airplane noise. I for some reason, I like the airplane noise right now. But you can really test out what will work. Discipline, remind yourself of your daily goal. There's an app called Parrot. The app is called Parrot. So you can speak into it. You can tell it something, like whatever you want to tell it. You can tell it, I am making a certain dollar amount every day, and it'll keep looping it. You can literally listen to it while you're working or while you're walking or while you're going to sleep. It's just even really, starting to get to a different territory is really good. But if you think about like this concept of, they call it either auto suggestion or they call it, basically it's kind of like believing a lie until it's true, like even if you think about it, what is the thing that kind of separates people? Like certain people believe certain things. They believe certain things and eventually, or they even say it and eventually it becomes true. If you keep on saying, hey, I'm great at math, I'm great at math, I'm great at math, eventually you become great at math. No different than if you keep telling yourself, I'm not a math person. It's going to happen. And the more you kind of stack those chips on one side of the table, the more hard it is to like break that habit and for it to bend in the opposite direction. So for me, if I said I'm not great at math, my brain wouldn't really register that because I know I'm great at math because I just keep saying it and I'm actually good. It materialized into me being good with math. So that's something I found that if I don't do that, then it really works. All right. So, and we've got, Yarborough Miller. So, oh wow, thanks for sharing. We'll take a look at the app. Absolutely, it's a great app. You have Calm. There's Headspace, and even YouTube. There's free ones on YouTube. I'm trying to think of some of the ones. I can't think of the. There's like a psychologist or something. He did some. It's on his YouTube channel. If I think of it, I'll add it to the comment later. So we'll keep going. Removing judgment of ourselves. I think that can also be a tricky one. If we put too much judgment on ourselves, we kind of put too much on ourselves. It can be difficult to kind of reach our potential, and just productivity wise, it can tank because we're scared to get something wrong. In entrepreneurship, a lot of times it's not about like getting every single thing right. You don't need to get everything right. You just need to get a few of the right things right. And it's kind of like baseball. You don't have to hit every single ball that goes by. You just got to hit like a certain number of them. Same thing with basketball. I think they say Michael Jordan missed 700. He took like 900 game-winning shots or something, and I don't know if he made or missed. I think he missed 700 or something, and he made 200 or something close to that. It's not you don't have to hit every game-winning shot, but you need to take the shot. That's the important thing. All right, so I'm just going to keep on going. Decision making, so this is another thing that can hurt our productivity. First principle decisions, and the world's in a much different place these days. But I would say when I kind of stumbled across like this idea of like first principle decision making, it had come from Elon Musk, and it talked about how he basically was trying to build a rocket, and instead of him buying the rocket already assembled, let's say it was $50 million to buy the rocket, he found a way to break it down to its components and source those same products for like $4 million or something like that. So in that case, it's like a first principle decision. So if you think about like, if you see a lot of people running in one direction, it's really hard to like not run in that same direction that everyone else is running in. It's hard to like have a first principle decision making framework that you operate from to go the opposite way, despite the ridicule, despite the criticism, despite all of the negatives that may await you. But there is productivity in that. There is results from thinking from a first principle decision making framework. So that goes up without saying, but avoid group thinking. Look for clean data. And when I say clean data, I mean, I'm thinking about the classics, for me, like there's a few classics out there, like Think and Grow Rich, these like classics, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, there's classics out there that at least if you can kind of get the basics down, then you can start to fill in other things. Naval Ravikant talks about like, he may read 100 books like over and over and over instead of trying to read like 10,000 books. He's just going to keep reading those same ones over and over again because those are like the basics. And he talks about reading certain things before you read other things. Like read the classics before like someone that's making a derivative of the classic. Radical decision making. Let's see. Clearing your workspace, clearing your home. And what I mean by radical decision making, it's being able to just be aware that you are making decisions. I think sometimes we make so many decisions, we forget how many decisions we get to make. I think for me, reading like business books, reading up on Peter Drucker, stuff like that, Jim Collins, these books help me see that these managers had decisions that they had to make. But the reality is you don't have to be like a CEO of like a Fortune 500 company to make decisions. You can make decisions in your daily life. You can make decisions in your family. You can make decisions for your business. And, kind of having like values that you operate from, are the values like written, have you looked at them recently? Is it in a place where you can actually commit it to memory, that kind of thing? Trust yourself, knowing who you are. So self-awareness, that's another thing. Lack of self-awareness can hurt productivity. So things that I recommend the Myers-Briggs assessment. If you haven't taken one of those recently, and it can change, the results can change. So you might have taken it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you might be a different person now because we're always evolving, we're always changing. I've been on the introverts side of it, and I've kind of tipped over to the extrovert side of it now. I'm definitely more extroverted. But it will help you at least see why you make decisions and why other people make decisions. We may be saying to ourselves, like, why is that person so quiet? Like, why aren't they talking enough? Well, that's not their like energy, like that's not their personality type. They're more analytical. They might be more behind the scenes. They may not want to be in front of the camera. They may not want to be talking and speaking up in a meeting. It doesn't mean that they can't like rock it out and do something really amazing. And vice versa, like someone that's introverted might be saying, why is that person always talking all the time? Why are they like in my face? Why won't they be quiet? And it's the same thing. Like there's extroverts, there's introverts, but knowing it is really key. I think the second level of this is this visionary versus integrator test. These are all, you can get these all free on the internet as well. There's Myers-Briggs, there's visionary integrator. If you want me to just send links or something, just DM me, and I can email you them. But visionary versus integrators. Visionaries versus integrators, there's a test called the crystallizer assessment. And the crystallizer assessment helps figure out, do you like having the ideas or do you like doing the ideas? Do you like planning, brainstorming, or do you like making decisions, calling shots, making things work? Like you're the person that gets in there and does the work. These are two different types of people. Now sometimes you can be both, which is kind of rare. You might have the great idea and you can do the great idea. I happen to be, I'm about an 84 or 80 on vision, and I'm about a 60 on integration or doing. So that tells you basically I'm good with like the ideas, and I can see things. Like I can see things a year out. I can see things 10 years out. I can see things 20, 30 years out. But when it comes to like actually operating and doing certain things, I have to bring my team in to help. I've got people that will help and do work, do things that will actually get the, project across the finish line. Try to answer these tests truthfully as well. Don't go into it with a preconceived notion. I know I've taken these a few times, and just try to really like answer it as truthfully as possible. So I don't like prove that I'm an extrovert or prove that I'm a visionary. Like I just go in and just take it. I think that's all I want to really say about that. Identity, it's just, again, you kind of get like the minimum that you will accept of yourself. That's kind of like a real, it's like a pause. I should take a pause after that statement. That's like a very heavy statement. Let's see, Yarborough Miller says, is there a book on this? Vision, enjoying the work. There actually is. The author of the book is Gino Wickman. And there's a ton of books that it's like a whole series. There is the main book that is like related to the crystallizer assessment is called Rocket Fuel. That book's called Rocket Fuel. He also, I don't even know if that's the best book that he's written, but it's a really good one. I think probably one of the best, if not the best, is going to be that book he wrote called Traction. So you might hear a lot of entrepreneurs talk about traction. It kind of leans more on the real estate side, but it is very good. It gives amazing frameworks. I mean, they have a whole like implementation program that comes with it. One of our guests and client on the podcast, Dana from Wet Paint Group, her company was undergoing the EOS operating platform. So it's short for Entrepreneur Operating System. It's an operating system for like a whole business. So like they created the whole thing. So it's a really robust network. Highly, recommend checking out all the stuff they have to offer. Your peaks and lows, I try to just remember not to get too low when things are low and not too high when things are high, because if you go all the way down to the bottom, that's a hard place to come from, and going to the top can be a hard place to come from as well, but if you're in the middle, at least you can manage it, and there's an average that gets created. Excuse me. Now, certain people will tell you like, you should really feel life. When it's time to cry, cry. When it's time to be, happy, be happy. And I believe in that. I think you should really embrace all situations But I think also being somewhat like some form of stoicism is probably necessary in order to, kind of weather the storms of business. Just I think programming is also really important. There's always going to be some kind of message that is, designed to get us to take an action. It might be something as simple as the weather, it might be something as simple as gas prices. It might be something as simple as international politics. I mean, it could be anything, but there is a message and there is a desired action out of that. So it's important for us to reprogram ourselves and consciously imagine what we want for ourselves and to design the program for ourselves, or else we'll be a part of someone else's program. I mean, it's that, kind of simple. The way to do this, you have the self-identity. You can work on that. It can be as simple as a one-pager. It can be as long as a book. I've made a whole book out of mine of like what I want for myself, for my family, for my business. And, I program myself with that. There's apps. You can use Parrot. It's a free app. You can listen to what you want what you want for yourself, not what someone else wants for yourself. And, really kind of like change your productivity habits that way. Beliefs. So beliefs shape reality. So, how you do one thing is like how you do everything, and whatever your narrative is, you will follow it. So if you're always telling this story about who you were as a child or what has happened to you, that is what the world sort of presents back to you. We're kind of starting to get into some other stuff like, maybe some Neville Goddard or, some of this like mirroring stuff and, starts to get a little deep. But, I found it to be true. Like if I start to attach myself to this narrative of, this is what I am, this is what I am about, other people start treating me that way. It really works. Like I've got tons of examples of this, but there's like people that for some reason they have a certain personality with the people around them. But me, I see that person differently. My thoughts towards that person are differently. I don't really, in my mind, mentally accept that the way that they are working with other people or talking to other people is like appropriate for how they should address me or talk to me. And by having this as like an intention going in, I receive what I had already visualized for the situation or for that individual. So it's almost like if you go to a place and you hear, let's say you're going to you're at a lunch line or something, and someone tells you the woman that's serving the food, she has a nasty attitude. She's just nasty. If you go into that scenario expecting this nasty attitude on the other end, you will 99% of the chance get that nasty attitude. But if you just choose to say, no, I don't believe that, I'm willing to see if it's true, or I see her as not having that attitude, and then you show up, 99% of the time, it will not faze you. And then it may turn around and get the person behind you in line, but it won't get you. And it's so simple, and it's almost funny, but we have, basically I'm saying here, we have more power than we can imagine. Like there's more power in seeing the outcome that you actually want versus not seeing it. But I think going back to it, we're programmed to think that we don't have that power to see it that way. We're more programmed to say, okay, we don't know. This is just by accident. Things are just happening. We don't have control. Get in line and move on. But the reality is, we're all powerful. It's starting to get kind of like woo-woo, but like that's the truth. And it is important for productivity. If you see yourself as a productive person that can actually execute, that can actually get work done, that actually is on time, and you execute at a high level, you're not gonna like turn around and do something that's contrary. Most humans want to be consistent with their own belief systems anyway. And this. If you're talking to someone in a conversation and they tell you about how great their team is or whatever it is that they want to support, they're going to build up facts and arguments that support that. They're not going to like contradict themselves. That's one of the most powerful things that humans do as well, is like we have this ability to, like, if we want to be right, we'll kind of go to the end of the world to like make sure that we're right. We'll stay consistent. So if you do that with your productivity, with what you're doing, it's more than likely going to affect your work and your results. So asking yourself better questions. This is another one. I think the name of the author is Chad Homesteader, maybe. He talks about questions to ask yourself. And it's very simple. If you ask yourself, like, why is this always happening to me? And it's not something that you want to happen. That thing will start to show up more. But if you ask, how do good things happen to me? More good things are going to start to show up for you. If you ask like higher quality questions of yourself, you will start to answer those questions. Because the reality is, like, our brains are really powerful. It's going to try to answer the questions that you're presenting it. We may not be aware of what we're putting into our brain because, again, this goes back to TV. This goes back to social media. This goes back to what we choose to consume on a daily basis. If it's not actually helping us with productivity, then what is it doing? It might be programming us to think something different. But again, you can program yourself with the questions that you ask, the things that you listen to, like, consistently. Like, you don't have to, you don't have to like take the program that's been given to you. I was on a coaching call the other day, and they said it's about getting that deck of cards that you were dealt and even if it's a bad hand, you deal it like you play it like it's the best hand that you just received. And I love that. It's like, we all have things that happen, but are you going to act like it's the best thing that happened to you? And that's where it gets hard. That's the hard part. But that's the productivity hack. Track your accomplishments. I got to shout out CEO Matty J on that, because he has, all kinds of frameworks and documenting the process. And he talked about, how you need to basically have a life resume, basically. So he says, have a whole life resume where, from the time you started school, from the time you were in college, or maybe the time you had your first job, what are like key things that you did? Like, don't just have a resume that starts with like your first job, have like a whole life resume. And so I started doing that, and do skills and experiences that you had. It might be something that you overcame. Maybe, maybe it was about like food. Maybe you overcame a food, situation, or, in my case, like relocating, now I can talk about relocating because I've done a lot of things in the relocation process. I know what to expect, and I can help other people that are doing that, working with Fortune 500 companies. I've documented in case study format basically all the clients that we've ever worked with, and the outcomes and the results, the challenges, the objective, the problem, the solution. So now I can present that to other potential clients, and they see it and they get excited. And, same thing with my one-on-one clients or my group clients. I can show, because I document the process. So if you document everything that you've done, it's very powerful, and you'll find things about yourself that you might have forgot. Listen to this. I had forgot that I was a great writer. I'm just going to let that sink in for a second. I forgot that I was a great writer. Let me tell you how great of a writer I am. And I'm not just doing this because I just want to say it. I'm just telling you the power of this exercise. I won an essay contest. So when I worked in banking, I wrote an essay contest, a national essay writing contest. I think there was like 1,000 people that entered that contest. It was about core values of the bank. I won that contest. When I was in college, I wrote essays for scholarships. So I got tons of scholarships and grants from writing essays, and I won a ton of them. I won so much one year that I had to give some of it back, because you could only put it towards a certain amount of tuition. Then grad school, I wrote basically a long essay on why my employer should sponsor me to go to grad school, so that they would pay for it, give me the time out of the office, and give me all the other resources that I needed to be able to be successful. I had forgot about this stuff, y'all. Like, I literally had done it and I forgot about it. But when I sat down and I did my life resume, I was able to document in each year 5 to 7 critical accomplishments for that year and things that I had done that stood out. And, I need to go back and do this for last year because, again, there's a power in like getting stuff out of your brain and putting it on paper. So if you put something on paper, sometimes it is it's just enlightening. All right. So, character, your mind is really at the root of all this stuff. You want to kind of experience who you're becoming. So, I don't know who's on the other side of this, but if you are, let's say you want to like upgrade your living situation, you want to move to a new home, move to a bigger home, you're trying to get to a new level, go to that neighborhood and start doing open houses, or like go to the neighborhood and just go to the local like restaurant or the local bar. This is how this works, y'all. Like before I moved to California, I was coming to California and I was just experiencing California as a resident would. I would just come out here and hang out. I would come out here, go to events. I would drive the streets, get a rental car, move around, and just basically see things as if I was living here. Then eventually it happened. Like it's very powerful. It works. But if you don't do it, sometimes you can forget. Same thing with the dream car. If you have that dream car you want to drive, or like go to the dealership. They can't tell you can't test drive it. They may want your license, or you might have to put some kind of insurance thing, but that's it. Just tell them, hey, I want to take this thing for a test ride. More than likely, you will become like, you're going to get that car if you just test drive it. Like, it's just proven. May not be this year. Might be a couple years. You're going to go look at something that's way out of whatever your income is, then it may not happen this year, but it'll happen. All right, so we talked a little bit about tracking earlier. Track your performance. Try to do it either every 30 minutes or every hour. Do this for like a week. Just from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, what did you do? 30 minutes, I ate breakfast. 30 minutes, I exercised. Another 30 minutes, I walked the dog. Another 30 minutes, I was on social media. Finally, I did some work, 2 hours in. That's fine. But then I went back to social media for 30 minutes. And then I went back for another dog walk. And then I went to eat lunch. And then I went to watch TV. And then I came back and then I did more work. And you look at this day and you're like, I only worked for like an hour and a half. So it's important to track your time. Because sometimes what we do and what actually happened don't line up. Oftentimes they don't. That's something I found. I was in my head thinking, oh yeah, I'm working. I'm sitting in front of the computer. I'm in the computer lab or I'm in my office. I had my office, y'all. I used to be in my office. I'm like, I'm in my office, I'm working. But when I did my productivity chart, I found that people were coming into the store. We had a store, so people were coming into the store. People were calling me. I was responding to emails and then getting distracted and going and, starting to do something else. And before I know it, that deep work wasn't there. So I had to start scheduling deep work time, scheduling time for myself, scheduling time for just thinking. And I got a whole nother live on just deep work and thinking time. These are some, great things that I picked up here. Some of this stuff even just like as of recent. Have an overall score for the day. This one's I got from Brendon Burchard. He talks about, and his program's pretty rigid, like not in a bad way, not in a good way. I'm just saying it's rigid. Every day you're scoring yourself, every week you're scoring yourself, every month you're scoring yourself, every quarter. He's got a journal for you to just journal and actually, put reflections in there. It's intense, but it works. Sometimes you can look at that week and you're like, man, I got like a 70 this week. What was wrong? Then the next week you're at an 80. Well, the week that you were at an 80, you were in bed on time. You were eating healthy. You weren't eating junk. You were staying off of social media. Sometimes it's more about the things you don't do, versus the things that you do. I find journaling to be really critical for my productivity. Thinking on paper for me is a really good thing. So thinking on paper means whatever stream of consciousness, just put it on paper. I'll tell you, there's a really good book about this called, let me think about it. It's called, I can tell you the author. It's Julia Cameron, I believe, is the author. think it's actually James Cameron's sister, maybe, or something. It's called The Artist Way. That's what it's called. The Artist Way. That book is really awesome because basically she says, just write 3 pages a day. Just get it out of your head, put it on paper, and at the end of the year, go back and reflect on it. Or don't wait till the end of the year, but reflect on it monthly. I reflect on mine. It works out to be about every month because I'll put 3 pages down a day, and then mentally, every 100 pages, I go back and I reflect and I say, what did I talk about? What was happening? What worked well? What didn't work? How can I improve? Do that in the morning, do that at night. It makes a huge difference. Here's one that has really helped me. Planning my days in advance. Sounds really simple, but the night before, I'll make a list. And I've played around with the list. I've done one thing the night before. I've done 20 things on this list. Right now, I found 6 items is that's the sweet spot for me. I put 6 things on my list the night before. So it might be, wake up, make a proposal for a client, implement some kind of system, work on some type of, outreach, do some type of project management thing, whatever it is. I found that to be really good. So massive action, of course, action is at the center of all this stuff too. Like sometimes, depending on what your personality type is, you may not be as oriented to take action. I know for me, that's the thing I have to do is I have to take action because I am so visionary. I have to take the action or nothing will get done. And if you're stuck with action, I found there's a tool. And again, if you want any of this information, DM me and I will send you an email with links and things like that. There's a website called Intercom, and they put something together called the Rice Simple Prioritization for Product Managers. So it's basically for their people that work there, but it's really good because it helps you prioritize and weight things. So you might be trying to figure out what's more important. Should I post on social media or should I email someone right now? And it'll let you rank them and weight them and actually come up with the actual objective opinion of which one's better to do right now. And I've found that to be really good when it comes to making lists and figuring out what to do next. So those are the 10 productivity mistakes that I see. Many of these are firsthand. Many of these also come from my clients. Again, if you want any of this information, just DM me, DM me the word resources. DM me the word resources, and I will share those with you in a document. I'm also thinking about putting together this workshop. I will be putting together this workshop. So if you want more information like this and you want to see if we can kind of work together, I'm going to be putting on a workshop here soon. If you want to sign up for that, just DM me the word workshop and I'll respond, and we can get you registered. I'll be basically putting on a short workshop to kind of walk through some of this stuff and really try to help, unlock your productivity. Because this is this interesting point. Everyone's happy at the beginning of the year to get started on new things. It's a new year, but then, February, March, April starts to come. It's not quite spring yet. And that excitement's kind of dying down.